Let me ask you something. Have you ever agreed to do something and then, like a moment later, you kind of stop and think, wait, why did I just do that? Well, chances are you've just been influenced by a powerful psychological principle without even realizing it.
All right, so let's get right into the psychology behind that feeling. We're going to be diving into the work of Dr. Robert Cialdini to really unpack the hidden forces that shape our choices. First, we'll look at our brain's automatic shortcuts, then the incredible power of giving and getting back. After that, we'll tackle our deep-seated need to be consistent, the magnetic pull of the crowd. And finally, and this is the important part, how we can actually arm ourselves against all these persuasive tactics. You know, to really understand persuasion, we have to first admit that our brains can be, well, fundamentally lazy. We're just flooded with information all day, every day. So to cope, we rely on these mental shortcuts to make decisions. But here's the catch. Those very shortcuts can be hijacked. Okay, I know this sounds like the setup to a really weird joke, but the answer actually reveals this incredibly powerful biological principle that affects us too. There was this fascinating experiment by an animal behaviorist, M.W. Fox, that gets right to the heart of it all. So get this. A mother turkey's maternal instinct is triggered by just one thing, the cheep, cheep sound of her chicks. So researchers took a stuffed polecat, a natural enemy, and put a little recorder inside it that played that sound. And what happened? The mother turkey not only accepted it, she actually gathered it underneath her. But the second they turned the sound off, she attacked it. It's what's called a fixed action pattern. It's like a button gets pushed and a pre-programmed tape just starts playing. And it turns out, we're not so different from that turkey. We've got our own versions of that cheep cheep sound, these little triggers that can set off our own automatic behaviors. Cialdini has a great name for this, the click-whir response. Click goes the trigger, and whir goes our automatic, unthinking behavior.
So what's one of the most powerful clicks that gets our mental tapes whirring? Well, it's the rule of reciprocation. This is that deep, ingrained societal rule that says we have to try to repay in kind what another person has provided us. It's the ultimate IOU.
I mean, this story is just incredible. It's 1985, and Ethiopia is in the middle of a devastating famine. And yet, they sent $5,000 to help earthquake victims in Mexico City. Why on earth would they do that? Because 50 years earlier, Mexico had sent them aid. A 5-decade-old debt completely overrode famine and self-interest. That, right there, is the power of reciprocity. So, at its core, this principle works because we are hardwired from childhood to feel super uncomfortable being indebted to other people. Right? Society calls people who don't give back moochers or freeloaders. And the rule is so strong that even a gift you didn't ask for can trigger it. You know, like when someone at the airport hands you a flower, you might just throw it away a minute later, but not before you feel that little pang of pressure to give them a donation. And of course, people who are pros at persuasion use this feeling of obligation all the time with this really clever technique. First, they make a huge request they know you're probably going to say no to. Something like, hey, would you be willing to chaperone a group of juvenile delinquents on a day trip to the zoo? You say no, of course. Then they retreat to a smaller request. Okay, I get it. Well, would you at least be willing to donate $2 to the cause? And you can see just how ridiculously effective this is. When researchers just asked for the big request by itself, only 17% of people agreed. But when they used this rejection then retreat strategy, compliance shot up to 50%. It nearly tripled. Why? Because that second, smaller request feels like a concession on their part. So we feel this automatic pull to make a concession of our own, which is to say yes. All right, next up is what Emerson called the hobgoblin of the mind. It's our obsessive desire to be, and to appear to be, consistent with what we've already done. Once we make a decision, even a small one, these powerful internal and external pressures kick in to make us stick with it. Just picture this scenario from a study by psychologist Thomas Moriarty. You're chilling on the beach. Someone nearby puts their radio down on their blanket and goes for a walk. Then a thief runs by and snatches it. Normally, only 4 out of 20 people actually did anything. Most people just didn't want to get involved. But here's the kicker. In the next version of the experiment, the person with the radio first asked their neighbor, "Excuse me, would you please watch my things?" And they said yes. That tiny little commitment, it changed everything. When the thief came by this time, 19 out of the 20 people became virtual vigilantes, chasing after the guy to stop him. This drive for consistency is exploited in a really masterful way by some toy companies. They get parents to make a commitment, a promise to their kid for that one special toy for Christmas. Then they make sure the stores don't have enough of it, so parents have to buy other gifts instead. But then come January, what happens? The ads are back, the toy is suddenly in stock everywhere, and parents rush out to the stores to make good on that original promise.
So you see, that initial commitment is everything. Once we've taken a stand, whether it's agreeing to watch a radio or promising a toy, our powerful, almost stubborn need to be consistent just takes over, and it pretty much compels us to see it through.
Okay, our third weapon of influence is one you see absolutely everywhere, every single day. It's this simple but incredibly powerful idea that we figure out what's correct by looking at what other people think is correct. I'm talking about laugh tracks on sitcoms, bestseller stickers on books, or even bartenders putting a few of their own dollars in the tip jar to get things started.
Now, this mental shortcut, assuming that if tons of people are doing something, it must be the right thing to do, it usually works out pretty well for us. But that very assumption is what makes us so vulnerable to being manipulated by it.
And here's where it gets dangerous. Just following the crowd can lead to something called pluralistic ignorance. This is that bizarre situation where, in an emergency, if nobody else looks concerned, we just assume it's not actually an emergency. We end up following the collective and often mindless decision of the group.
And what this shows is that social proof is most potent when we're observing the behavior of people we see as being just like us. In one study, people were way more likely to return a lost wallet if they learned that the first person who tried to return it was similar to them. We are wired to follow the lead of our peers.
Okay, so now that we can spot these powerful weapons of influence, how do we actually defend ourselves? Look, it's not about rejecting them completely. They're useful shortcuts for a reason. The real key is knowing when they're being turned against us.
Like Ralph Waldo Emerson said, it's not consistency itself that's the problem, it's a foolish consistency. The trick is to be able to tell the difference between good, thoughtful consistency and that rigid, automatic kind that gets us into trouble.
So how do you actually do this? Here's a little defense toolkit. First, listen to your stomach. Seriously, that little tightening feeling is often the very first sign that you're being pushed into a commitment you don't really want. Second, ask yourself what Cialdini calls a heart of hearts question. Something like, knowing what I know now, would I still make this choice? That can snap you out of that consistency spell. And finally, make a conscious effort to separate the person from the request. Are you saying yes because it's a great deal, or just because you happen to really like the salesperson?
Our world today, it's faster than ever, and it basically demands we use these mental shortcuts. By understanding these principles, you're not just learning about psychology, you're learning the art of mental self-defense. So the real question to leave you with is this. In an age that pretty much runs on automatic, what's the true cost of not paying attention to why we say yes?